Yet what we found is that there has been collusion between this administration and big tech to censor American speech. In the last Congress, I introduced a piece of legislation called the Disclosed Government Censorship Act. My aim there was to force the administration to disclose to Americans whenever they did work with big tech firms to censor American speech. Regretfully, my Democrat colleagues blocked that legislation in the last Congress. But since that time, and thanks to my colleague Eric Schmidt, we've had an opportunity to find out to a much greater degree the extent of censorship that's been undertaken. In the case that Eric brought when he was Attorney General of the state of Missouri, that was Missouri versus Biden, we had the opportunity to see the extent and the detail which this administration had gone to work with big tech to silence any opinion that differed from their preferred point of view. A Louisiana federal district judge heard this case. He determined that the actions of the White House violated our First Amendment rights, violated our constitutional rights to free speech. He's enjoined that. Shockingly, the Biden administration is fighting to continue to censor Americans. They're asking for a stay so they can continue to censor right now. They say they'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court. Well, let me share with you what that federal judge said about this case. Quote,
is going to take, as I mentioned, we're in the 100 million to 150 million Americans here who have this unwitting financial risk exposure to those thousands of Chinese companies. No one, to my knowledge, has any handle at Treasury or elsewhere as to what is the total amount of financial risk exposure of the American people to those Chinese corporate enterprises in our capital markets, not to mention the sovereign bonds that we just talked about. So it's a big number. It's over $1 trillion. It could be 2 or 3. No one really knows for sure, but that is my greatest concern, that if we don't act to at least excise, sanction bad actors, for goodness sake, we're going to have a horrific financial crisis, and folks are going to be coming to you asking for grace periods and even bailouts of the American people because the hit that the American people are taking is so draconian. Wait a minute. We have a chance right now to do something about this. Why is it that we always have to wait until we're electrocuted before we get the picture? So that would be my strong feeling.
So what you're saying is that you believe that should those actions take place, the reaction is going to be a closing down of the markets, a loss by the American people of all their investments in China, and therefore their savings, their retirements, whatever is there is going to be gone. Is that what you're saying?
That's my concern, yes.
Yes. You know, one of the things today in Bloomberg, there was an article that's Wall Street's biggest banks face a harsh reality check in China. They're continuing to look at and starting to think about their investment there, their position there, which is interesting. And I think we need to keep the pressure on everybody. I think this is making a difference, and these folks are starting to think twice about their investments there. And so, Mr. Robinson, you know, how do we prepare the American people for this? Do we start by saying these asset managers and investors have a fiduciary responsibility that they need to disclose to the people who are investing in China? Or should we just let them go ahead? Should we list China as a terrorist organization, as an enemy of the state, to prohibit the investment there? How do we control the ability to invest there and cut off the money that keeps flowing into this country that underpins all of the activities of the Chinese Communist Party, including detaining their people, oppressing their people, building up their military, et cetera?
We have to enforce the rules. After all, these are fiduciaries. They're supposed to be seeing companies that are compliant with U.S. federal securities laws. None of the Chinese are. You have to have corporate governance. There's no such thing. Or rule of